At this time on Monday mornings, we're joined by Randy Stapilus. He's the publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing, and we spend a few minutes talking about, well, everything from just current events in Idaho to politics in Idaho. Sometimes it also touches on national politics as well. Coming up on 844, Bill Colley with you on Top Story as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 59. First of all, Randy, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back.
Your column yesterday dealt with this area, which we've touched on before in northern Idaho and parts of some neighboring states called the Redoubt, which is, I guess, the way it's pronounced. But you mentioned that despite the fact that you've got a lot of people who are settling in that area, it's almost like New Hampshire when New Hampshire had that campaign to attract libertarians, and they came by the droves, and they actually changed the politics of that state somewhat. But your point in that column was that these people pretty much are coming there and then they're looking simply to do what they said they were going to do in the first place, kind of live alone and not bother anybody because they haven't had a whole lot of influence on politics in Idaho.
It can be a little bit difficult to get a really good handle on them, because part of the concept that they're going for is to live independently, and some of them like to live off the grid. I think that as with a lot of groups of people, especially something like this, it's kind of tricky to talk about all of them as though they were all exactly the same thing. I think they're probably not that monolithic, and you can probably find some characteristics for some of them that don't apply to all of them. So it's a little bit tricky that way. But there was some speculation earlier on that they were going to change the politics of the area. I guess I'm a little bit skeptical after looking at some of the numbers from the primary election that they actually have done very much of that. I'm not sure that their numbers are that large, and if they're that withdrawn, a number of them may simply be reluctant to vote.
Yeah, and
So that's a possibility too.
I got that impression when I was reading some of the interviews with them in the big piece in the Washington Post, and you referenced the Spokesman Review did a story some months before that, but that a lot of them came here just simply because they want that quiet lifestyle, and beyond that, they're not really people who are going to be out marching in the street for anything.
I think that's probably true. I think that's there's when you look at outsiders who are coming in for something of a different kind of lifestyle, one, and you're talking about northern Idaho, then the comparison can sometimes be made with the Aryan Nations group and people like that came in years ago. But these are obviously not as a group Aryan Nations type people, and there are quite a few other differences as well. So I'm kind of hesitant to draw too many sharp connections. I guess we'll see in the elections how many new votes turn up, but my guess is that probably not a whole lot is going to change.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I was reading in your Idaho Weekly Briefing over the weekend about some of the changes proposed at Bruno Canyon, and so I took a drive up there, of course, this weekend, my first visit, and I did not see anybody working on the bombing range, which was a good thing. I had read a warning about that before I drove up there, and of course, I have a 4-wheel drive, which was I think necessitates the trip out there. But what shocked me was this story was announced a few days back about the BLM making some of the changes, and you had said they expect this to all be done by November. So I went rolling in there Saturday afternoon, and lo and behold, all of the heavy equipment is already working. I, I,
Hmm.
I thought I'm shocked that a bureaucracy suddenly has gotten to work that fast. We don't expect something like that.
Well, you never know. It does happen from time to time.
I also was as I was making that drive, and I ended up taking one wrong turn because I came up on a sign that looked to be bleached out, and someone had just drawn an arrow on it, and that put me up on the hill over by the Hagerman fossil beds. And I had to do a little bit of a soft shoe to get back on the highways and to get where I was going. But I noticed the haze in the mountains isn't what we were seeing just a couple of weeks ago. So it looks as if our wildfire season is quickly coming to an end.
It seems to be pretty much right on schedule. It's there are times when it runs a little bit later than this, but generally by right around in mid September, especially if you're getting toward the back end of September, it starts fading out. And I guess with the main exception of the Pioneer Fire that's still going not too far from Boise, that with that main exception, most of the rest of it has been pretty well doused at this point. And I think we're coming to the back end of the fire season, or at least hopefully so. This is usually about the time that that starts to happen. Around the Pacific Northwest, you're starting to see a little bit more rain, cooler temperatures, and so forth, and those things usually help bring some of these fires to a halt too.
It would take a lot of rain, though, like a deluge, to actually bring these things to a very quick and sudden end.
Oh yeah, that's true, and that's why the Pioneer Fire, which is I think by far the largest one that Idaho has had this year, that one is still going. They're still not entirely able to crack that one, but it probably now that they're able to pretty much throw all their efforts at it. My hunch would be that will probably be winding down here in the next week or two.
Our guest is Randy Stapilus. He's the publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing, 10 minutes away from 9 o'clock, and we're at 60. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Randy, for people who'd like to see the briefing, where would you send them?
I would send them to www.ridenbaugh.com. That's RIDENBAUGH.
One thing that you do on a consistent basis is track the money raised by the various candidates who are running for either U.S. House or U.S. Senate. And you've mentioned in the past that not always, we have some opponents sometimes who are just on the ballot to hold that place, and in case something happens to the incumbent, and for that reason, you know, we want the parties want someone on the ballot. But you had mentioned a couple of times that the fellow who is challenging Mike Crapo for U.S. Senate has a really good resume, and he's been able to raise some money. But I'm a little shocked today to find out that apparently none of these candidates, these Democrats, have made it into the first round, at least the first round of debates, because it was said that no one could find any evidence that they were actually campaigning. Are you?
Well, it is kind of shocking that they're not that's not happening, and that really is. And it so far as I can see, it's the Democrats' fault for not getting into it. The candidates are required as part of the process to provide certain kinds of evidence that they are in fact running an active campaign, that they're not doing the kind of thing that you were just alluding to, which candidates sometimes do, of putting their name in and just basically being a placeholder. Uh, Two of the candidates anyway, Sturgill for the Senate and Piotrowski for the first district, have run and are running something of active campaigns. And Sturgill has actually raised. I was surprised to see how much he has raised, $500,000, which is more than the last Democratic U.S. Senate candidate raised throughout the campaign. There is some active campaign there, at least on the part of those two. Jennifer Martinez in the second district has not raised any money, according to the federal reports. So that there'd be a good deal more question there about whether that's really an active campaign. But the other two seem to be, but for whatever reason they did not respond in time, and that's really unusual because the debates are usually something it's one of the few points in the campaign when Democrats are actually able to uh, stand on a level playing field with the Republican candidates. They can go toe to toe. They can have it out with them. It's really the one point during the campaign that where there's a certain measure of equality there in terms of what they can do, and that's pretty much gone now, so far as I can see, unless some kind of other agreement can be made. But the Republicans would be on reasonable ground at this point, saying that there were clear rules in place that Democrats have met for years in the past. You guys didn't meet them, so too bad.
And I'm not knocking the Republican speaking styles. I think that they all do well, but none of them are William Jennings Bryan. And this is surprising to me because you would think that the Democrats would feel, as you pointed out, this is a very level playing field to get a little attention.
It's the best that they've got. It's a period of time, an hour or however much that they have allotted, in which the candidates have about an equal period of time. They're right there together, right next to each other. You can compare the two. Uh, the Democrats never have a. That's the best shot that Democrats get during the campaign season. It's usually one that they're very careful to protect, and if they can expand it, if they can persuade for more debates. Historically, they prefer to have more debates rather than fewer, and I would think that would have been the thought this time, but this was from so far as I can tell from the information that's come out from the group putting together the debates. It sounds as though the Democrats just didn't get their materials in on time, and they didn't do what needed to be done for the first time, I might add, in a very long time. And I'm not certain, but that this may be the first time ever since organized debates have been held in Idaho that the Democrats have not uh, wound up participating. That it's wound up happening without them because of what they did or failed to do.
We got a couple of minutes to go. Randy, I noticed you had a story about the approval of the geothermal well over in the Mini-Cassia area. And as I was looking at that, just was thinking that we have all of these calderas that are underneath the Snake River Valley, and yet we have so few of these projects, which would seem to make so much sense when it comes to energy.
Well, there are possibilities out there. There are places in the state where hot water has done some remarkable things. In Boise, around the Capitol Mall, in eastern Boise, in the Warm Springs area, there's some remarkable hot water possibilities. There are old houses in eastern Boise that are still heated by geothermal water, and there was an old city natatorium that years ago was a great swimming pool and spa that was set up for Boise because all of that capability was available. But it hasn't been very heavily exploited over the years, and really remarkably little has been exploited in all this time. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with in the Burley area.
And just with all the hot springs and everything else we have, I mean, it's obvious this is a great resource. It's just a matter of, I guess, convincing people to get on board with it.
I guess so. Doing it right so that you don't wind up using it up, but but there's a lot of resource there, and there's probably a good deal more that could be done pretty reasonably and safely around southern Idaho.
Randy, before we wrap up, for people who'd like to actually take a look at the briefing again, where would you send them?
I would send them to www.ridenbaugh.com. That's RIDENBAUGH.
We look forward again to speaking with you next Monday morning.
We'll talk to you then.
Take care, sir. Randy Stapilus joining us today, publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing. He does this on Monday mornings with us, right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 59, and we're coming up on news from Fox at 9 o'clock. And now I may have a guest in the next half hour. This is one of those things. I got a call last week from a candidate's campaign, and I said, yeah, well, let's try Monday morning just after 9 o'clock news. And then I didn't hear a reply. So then I called and left another message and said, let's try Monday. Now, they either got the message and they decided to come in, but they didn't tell me. But I hate this kind of stuff, though, because you can't plan if you don't know. So we may have a candidate joining us in a few minutes. Otherwise, we're going to pick back up with our conversation about terrorist attacks in Minnesota, New York, and New Jersey, and where else they may strike. That's on the way this morning on Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.